This is lesson 8, blending modes and effects. Blending modes are when you have two layers that are interacting with each other. And effects are different things that you can apply to a single layer, things like shadows, inner shadows, bevel and emboss, and even gradients. So let's have a look at how these all work and how they interact with each other. For this lesson, you're going to need your lesson 8 blending modes and effects PSD. Open the file and we'll get started. Right, so do the drop down here from your layers panel and select multiply. Now you'll see that it sort of looks through. Multiply is a really nice one if you want to blend it into the background, but still be able to see it. The next one is color burn. Now color burn is interesting because you have to know what kind of color it's going into. The color that is in the background will severely affect the color that's here. I must admit, I've been doing Photoshop for a long time and I still don't know exactly what each of the blending modes does as soon as I see them. So what I do is I just try them like this. So let's try the next one. We'll try lighten. And you can see obviously it's got a lighter color, but until you actually try it, you won't know exactly how it looks. Next one we're going to go overlay. Now overlay is one of my favorites because it really allows you to add things into the background very, very easily. See, this Facebook logo looks very, very nice. And also, multiply and overlay tend to look a little bit opposite. One dark, one being lighter. Next one is difference. Now, difference gives you definitely a different effect. As you can see, it's got a sort of like a dark purple color. So, it depends on what kind of effect you're looking for. If you're going for a sort of grungy logo or a grungy background, difference could definitely be one of the blending modes you should choose. Right, let's try luminosity. And again, this is one of those strange ones that sort of depends on the color. Now, one thing I do like about luminosity is, as you can see here, if I zoom in, the Facebook logo looks part of the background, and it's also taken on the colors, so it can look really, really nice. The last one is we've got the original, and then we have the background here. Now, depending on the background, depends on how these blending modes behave. So, try them out. So, normally what I would do is I would select, let's say, multiply here. I click to the right, and I just keep trying them. And once you've got it selected up here, you can actually use your arrow key to skip through them until you find the one that you want. So, for example, this one could be quite useful if you wanted to remove the blue background. Great, so that's blending modes. Next we have layer effects, but first of all I'm just going to close my group for blending modes just so I can see what I'm doing. Let me open up the effects, and again we can see here we've labelled the layers ready for you. So let's move down and move to the left a little bit. Now first of all we need our shadow, so I'm just going to select the drop shadow layer. Now different people do this in different ways. My personal way of doing it is right click, blending options. Other people might go to here. You can see the effects menu item here, and you can go to blending options as well. An important thing to remember about the blending options is that you must click on the word to change the settings. If I just click on the actual checkbox, nothing happens, apart from turning that layer style on and off. So if I want to change anything, I must click on the word. Here you can change the size, and also you can change the distance. So try playing around with some of the different settings. Also, a nice thing about this is if you're using the global light and you've got shadows elsewhere, they will all change if you start changing the angle. And this can be quite useful to keep things consistent. Right, let's click OK and we'll move on to inner shadow. Now something to note is that when you have a layer style applied to a shape or a picture or anything, you can see the layer effects here. If you want to access them directly, just double click and that will go directly to a layer effect that's been applied. So just click OK and then we'll move on to inner shadow. Right click, blending options. Okay, and then from here what you can do is just select inner shadow and then change the size. And you'll see that the sort of increasing the size quite a lot can give you like a depth feel to it. So if you're doing things like screenshots of websites and things like that, adding a very deep inner shadow can give it a really nice effect. Click OK. Now we'll move on to inner glow. I'm just going to right click blending options. Now we see here that we've got the label outer glow, so let's just try that one first, outer glow. And as you can see, you can't really see anything. So the outer glow really only works if you've got a darker background. So let's move on now to inner glow. And you can see here we've got this lovely inner glow here. And this can be a nice effect if you're doing things like hover over buttons. So when someone puts their mouse over a button, if you add a outer glow effect or inner glow, it can give it a nice indication that you're using this button. Click OK, and then we'll move on. The next one we have is bevel and emboss. Now, bevel and emboss is very dangerous. The reason I say that is because it can make your design look really cheap really quickly. So let's try it. Let's go right click, blending options. And I'm just going to move the layer style panel over like this just so I can see what I'm doing. Now select bevel and emboss, and there it is. It's ugly. It's from the 1990s and it's really, really horrible. Now what we can do with this is we can actually soften it to give it a nice sort of rounded feel. Or you can increase the size quite dramatically and it gives it actually a really, really nice sort of gradient feel. So have a think about it. Try not to do anything like this. I know that's my personal opinion, but I do think that looks old. So if you just increase the size quite a lot, you can give it a lovely smooth effect. Just click OK and we'll move on. The next one we have is color overlay. It's very simple. Right click blending options and you basically overlay a color on top of whatever the shape of the layer is. Click on color overlay and there you go. You can change the color itself and you can even change the blending mode as we did earlier. Also, you can change the color of which you want to do it. Now this can come in useful when you want to use a shape. So if you want to quickly change the color of the shape, for example, if you've cut out an apple from another picture and you want to just have a solid shape, and this is the way to do it. Very quick and very easy. Now we've saved the best till last, and that is gradient overlay. It's definitely one of my favorites because it really allows you to make some really nice effects. Again, right click blending options. Let's see what we're doing. So I'm just going to move this over. Great. Now clicking on gradient overlay selects the first colors that you've got here, the first gradient. If I just click OK. Now there's a lot to these gradients. If I want to change the gradient itself, I just click in the center here. And then instantly what I can do is change the type of gradient that I'm using. Some are obviously nicer than others. Now, the first three are always the same. Top left, this is your foreground and background colors. The second one is the foreground to nothing, so it fades out. And then the third one is always black to white. Now, the one we're going to use now is we're actually going to use black and white because we're going to do a nice little effect with this. What we're going to do is very simply is change the opacity down. Now what that does is it gives you this lovely sort of gradient effect, giving it as though the button has got actual depth. Click OK, and there you go. Now the real powerful part of this is, say for example I want to change the color of my gradient overlay to the same color as my color overlay. What I do is I select my color, I move my mouse over like we did before, and I click OK. And again, I've got this gradient overlay. And this is something very, very useful for web designers if you want to change colors and affect the color scheme very, very quickly. Now we've looked at 6 different styles of effects. Now what happens if you get the effects just right and you want to copy it from one place to another? Well, that's what we're going to do next. So I'm just going to right click and do actual pixels, hold down space just so I can move over and see my 2 submit buttons. Now as you'll notice there, I've got a couple of different effects, including a new one called stroke, and that's what we can see with the white line on the left hand side. What I want to do is copy the styles from here onto this one. The way I do that is I open up my submit button. Now let me just double check this is the right one. Yeah. And then I'm going to go to the frame, move down, and you'll see that the submit button is open. Now first of all, what I want to do is I'm just going to get the drop shadow for the actual text. To do this, I hold down Option or Alt, drag, and then move up onto my button, text like that, and then let go. Okay, so we'll do that again, but this time we'll do it with the actual effects on the button itself. Just to see what I'm doing, I'm going to double click on character, just to give myself a little bit more space and room. So here we go, we're going from here to here. So let's just start with the drop shadow first. Hold down Option or Alt, drag onto the button, and let go. Let's do that again. This time I'll get the gradient overlay, hold down Option, drag, let go. And lastly the stroke, drag, and let go. And that's a really useful way of moving your styles from one place to the other. So that's everything for blending modes and effects. Hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you use it to make some really nice effects with your different layers. If you're interested in learning more about anything that we've covered in the screencasts or about Photoshop,